With their deep, dark eyes and grey-skinned bodies, they are pop culture's most familiar aliens. They've been dubbed the Greys. But what do we know about these presumed extraterrestrials? Eyewitnesses swear they have encountered these aliens, and they believe the Greys are here on a diabolical mission, abducting humans and conducting reproductive experiments.
This is a very real phenomenon. Something is happening to these people.
Who are they? Where are they from? What do they want? And are they real?
It's good to have an open mind, but not so open that your brains fall out.
Next on UFO Files, the mystery of the Greys' agenda. The Greys have been depicted in books, magazines, and films. They're commonly described as being about 4 feet tall, with huge, bald heads that sit on grey, frail, hairless bodies. These creatures have small noses, or no noses at all, slits for mouths, no ears or visible reproductive organs, and very distinctive eyes.
They come to a point, not actually a point, but they just come up like almonds, big almonds.
Almost a black, dark brown. They're dark.
Those who maintain that extraterrestrials do exist often portray the Greys as the bad guys of the alien world.
The Greys, from what I know, are just like the worker bees. When they come and get you, they come and get you.
They took time out of my life and replaced it either with a blank spot or with a scary memory.
If the Greys or another alien species are really visiting Earth, what do they want? What's their agenda?
An effort to create an offspring race that perhaps had the best qualities of humanity and the best qualities of these alien beings.
Many ufologists, people who routinely research alien sightings, claim that Greys have been visiting Earth for thousands of years. They say records exist as petroglyphs, cave drawings, and prehistoric artwork.
All around the world, we have these stories of beings coming from the heavens to Earth, star beings, whether it be the Hopi Indians in North America, all these, South American cultures, the Mayans, the Aztecs. All around the world, there are these stories of gods visiting ancient man.
"6,000-year-old artifacts have been found in what was Sumer, modern-day Iraq. Interpreters of the carvings have said they depict servants or helpers of their god.
Many of the artifacts that they've left us resemble what we would call today a modern-day gray alien. Large bulbous head, large eyes, spindly limbs, very thin bodies.
After that, UFOs and aliens went largely unmentioned until the dawn of the modern era. It was in the 20th century that the Greys' agenda began to take shape. According to the UFO community, there has been an obvious and persistent increase in encounters with Greys. One of the most surprising claims made by some in the UFO community is that during World War II, Hitler and the Nazis were in collusion with the Greys. They alleged that the aliens gave the Nazis advanced weapons technology used during the war. Since the Second World War, hundreds of people have claimed experiences with the Grey aliens.
The number reported, the quality of the reports, the similarities of the reports, and the fact that many of these reports can be substantiated under hypnosis lends very compelling strength to the idea that this is a very real phenomenon. Something is happening to these people.
No official record for alien encounters or abductions exists. However, the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, keeps an unofficial tally of American UFO sightings. Their statistics show the number of sightings has increased from a handful each year in the early part of the 20th century to dozens by the mid-20th century, and now thousands each year in the 21st century.
Well, it seems that the whole business about alien abduction really dates from the Cold War, back when there were UFOs, unidentified flying objects being spotted, and it was all these international tensions after the Second World War.
According to UFO believers, the Greys first made contact through a much-debated 1947 crash in the desert outside Roswell, New Mexico.
The Roswell story is that a rancher named Mac Brazel came into Roswell and told a story to the newspaper about how he had found some strange debris. And from that incident, the Roswell incident, we've now got an elaborate story that many of the American public think is a story of flying saucer wreckage and perhaps little alien greys whose corpses were scattered about, some of whom may have survived alive and are hidden away at some secret facility.
The official US government position was that a large spy balloon went down at Roswell, not an alien spaceship. The balloon was part of a secret project designed to detect emissions from Soviet nuclear tests. But ufologists believe otherwise.
The Roswell story has been debated by a lot of people, but one thing that we know is that something came down about 75 miles north of Roswell Army Airfield in the summer of 1947. This was investigated by the 509th Bomber Unit's Chief Intelligence Officer, who was Captain Jesse Marcel. We know that some of this debris was taken back to the Army Air Base. We know that Marcel and the Army Air Base commander, Colonel Blanchard, thought that this was material from a flying disc. And we know that they thought this because a press release went out immediately announcing that the U.S. Army recovered one of the infamous flying discs that was in the news at that time.
In the years since the Roswell incident, advocates claim that all contact between the Greys and the US government has been kept top secret. Despite repeated official government denials that a UFO crashed in the New Mexico desert, the stories won't die.
There are now more than 400 individuals on the public record who said, I was there, I picked up pieces, I saw pieces of wreckage, I saw the craft, I saw the bodies. So Roswell is simply a question of belief. Who do you choose to believe?
Fact or fiction, UFO sightings increased dramatically after the Roswell incident. In the 1950s, filmmakers seized on these stories, and for the first time, alien creatures appeared in movies, invading Earth with an agenda, sometimes evil. Films like The Thing and Plan 9 from Outer Space tapped into the public's fascination and fear of UFOs. The Day the Earth Stood Still warned of terrible consequences if Earth did not press forward into space as a friendly partner. Stories of abduction by an alien race called the Greys soon followed.
It was only really until the 1960s did people begin to believe that they were actually being abducted themselves by beings from other planets.
In 1961, a New Hampshire couple would become the first people ever to officially report being abducted by the Greys.
The Betty and Barney Hill story, of course, is one of the abduction experiences that kind of kicked off the whole abduction phenomenon.
The case of Betty and Barney Hill remains the seminal alien abduction tale. It stands as the first ever recorded encounter with the Greys, the alien species most often observed visiting Earth. It allegedly occurred on the 19th of September 1961 near Portsmouth, New Hampshire, USA. To this day, skeptics cannot dispute every detail of the story. Believers see the Hills incident as the defining moment in Grey history, when the world awoke to the troubling phenomenon of alien abduction. In her last on-camera interview, the late Betty Hill shared her experience.
My husband Barney and I are returning from Montreal, Canada. We're traveling down through the White Mountains of New Hampshire when we suddenly spot what we thought was a new star in the sky. And as we watched this, it changed direction and came in towards us.
Barney pulled over, grabbed a pair of binoculars, and leapt out of the car to get a closer look at the menacing flying object. Betty Hill's niece, Kathy Marden, was a teenager when this incident occurred.
At that time, through the binoculars, he saw the leader, what he called the leader, and crew members. There were people looking down at him.
And as he's watching, it began to descend. And at this point, he became frightened and ran back to the car, yelling that they were trying to capture us.
She was screaming to him, "Barney, you damn fool, come back here, get back."
They sped off. But soon after, they heard a buzzing sound. They turned onto a logging road and stopped.
There was a roadblock and there were people in the road. The people approached the car and they realized at that point that they were not human, that they were the people that Barney had seen in the UFO. This is where their memory lapsed. The next thing they fully consciously remembered was they were driving down the highway again, and they proceeded home.
When the Hills noticed the time, they realized that about 2 hours had elapsed that neither of them could account for. That was just the beginning of a mystery that would soon unravel. For nearly 2 years after their experience, the Hills had troubling nightmares. They went to several medical specialists and were eventually referred to Dr. Benjamin Simon, a highly respected Boston psychiatrist and neurologist with an extensive background in hypnotic therapy.
Dr. Simon told us these UFO people had caused us to have amnesia. And Dr. Simon removed the amnesia so that we could remember clearly all that had happened. They took us on board the craft, their craft, and we were taken into separate rooms. They were very human looking. They had 2 arms, 2 legs. The only difference basically were the facial features. The noses were very, very small. Almost no nose. Small lips, small nose. They examined my eyes, ears, nose, throat, skin, hair, and all. And then I was put on a table where they scraped my skin in an attempt to find out if our skin was alike or different.
Hill says that an alien conducted sexual experiments on them. They took semen from Barney. Betty may have had eggs extracted.
He tried to insert a needle-like instrument in my navel, which caused pains, so he stopped doing it. And I was grateful for that.
Years later, Betty Hill produced the first alleged eyewitness depiction of the Greys since ancient times. She portrayed the alien leader, who had shown her a tantalizing clue to indicate where he came from.
I asked him where he was from, and he showed me a star map.
In a hypnotherapy session a few years after her encounter, Betty drew a map of an alien star system. At the time, experts could not identify it. But then in 1966, Marjorie Fish, an enterprising ufologist and amateur astronomer, became fascinated by Betty Hill's star map. Fish spent the next 7 years examining the map and constructing models, trying to match it to a known star system.
It was only later, when a new star was discovered, that they found exactly what Betty had drawn on the star map.
In 1973, after reviewing 23 star models, Marjorie Fish claimed to have found a fit. She declared that Betty had drawn a star system some 40 light-years from Earth, Zeta Reticuli. At the California Institute of Technology, Dr. Charles Beichman, one of the world's foremost astronomers, examined Zeta Reticuli.
We have no way that to possibly travel that far. We don't know of any way for any solid vehicle to go that sort of a distance. But relatively speaking, within the scale of the galaxy, it's a very nearby star.
In a conventional Earth-based space shuttle, it would take nearly 1.5 million years to reach Zeta Reticuli. As well as his duties with the Institute of Technology and the Jet Propulsion Lab, Dr. Beichman is a leading member of NASA's Origins program. Their mission is to probe space for signs of life. He concedes that life is possible in the universe, maybe even on Zeta Reticuli.
Here we're looking at the two stars in the Zeta Reticulum system, about 40 light years away. The binary stars could well have planets around stars like this. The system is old enough that, in fact, you could have a stable life having evolved on any habitable planets in those systems. Again, prospects good. What do we know today? Nothing.
With just tantalizing evidence and no substantive proof that the Greys actually come from Zeta Reticuli, Betty Hill's case continues to be hotly debated. However, skeptics and believers do agree that since that night in September 1961, hundreds of alien abductions have been reported.
Just as a disease is contagious, so can an idea be contagious and spread from person to person.
Did Betty Hill really meet aliens from Zeta Reticuli? Did they conduct reproductive experiments as part of an evil agenda? Are the people claiming to have been abducted reporting the truth?
They're dreaming with their eyes open. So they have these hypnopompic, or upon awakening, hallucinations. That's the tactile sensations, the lights, the buzzing, and especially the sense of presence.
So many times the debunkers try to explain abductions as people simply mimicking and repeating stories that have been passed around over the years. Well, here's some people who had nothing to go by. Nobody had ever reported this, and yet their abduction experience is remarkably similar to what we hear from people even to this very day.
The Betty and Barney Hill abduction story broke in the 1960s and was soon followed by many more. The general public became entranced with the idea that alien spaceships were visiting Earth and that extraterrestrials known as the Greys were abducting humans. But in 1969, the US Air Force dismissed these accounts in an investigation codenamed Project Blue Book. The report concluded UFOs constituted no direct threat to the United States. Sightings of unidentified flying objects were the result of a mild form of mass hysteria, or, quote, war nerves, hoaxers, publicity seekers, psychopathological persons, and the misidentification of various conventional objects.
And there is nothing in the records which would indicate that we have been visited by any advanced civilization.
With that, the US Air Force declared the case closed. However, ufologists were not convinced by Project Blue Book. Many believe that the US government has been involved in a cover-up of cosmic proportions ever since the Roswell case.
It really has to be said that Blue Book was nothing more than a PR effort by the Air Force to explain away UFO phenomenon.
I think early on in the 40s and 50s, when they began to learn, they meaning the government, that UFOs, extraterrestrials, were probably a reality. I think it scared them to death because, number one, they feared public panic, disruption of the social systems, religious systems, and they were loath to admit that they could not control the skies over the nation.
Try as the Air Force might to debunk UFOs again and again through the 50s and 60s, whoever's operating these UFOs didn't appear to read the Air Force reports because they kept showing up.
Ufologists argue that Project Blue Book cannot account for a large number of cases. Out of 12,618 UFO reports, 701 remain unsolved. One of the most intriguing unsolved cases took place at Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico in 1964. According to the story, an alien spaceship landed at the base. Several Greys emerged and were greeted by US military personnel. It later became the basis for the famous closing sequence in Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
This is absolutely, something we cannot confirm. However, it has to be said that a rumor of this came out immediately. An airman at Holloman Air Force Base who went into the town and started talking about this. And according to the accounts, he was highly distressed, very upset, didn't know what to do, and he was not seen again.
In 1984, two mysterious film canisters appeared, helping to perpetuate the claims of conspiracy theorists.
Jamie Chandray in 1984 received this package in the mail, which was undeveloped film. There were two sets of undeveloped film. One was given to Bill Moore and one was given to Jamie. And he, in turn, released this to the world, and it was an 8-page memo signed by Harry Truman.
Known as the Majestic 12, or MJ-12 documents, they suggested that on the 9th of July, 1947, US President Harry Truman had authorized 12 high-ranking military and national security personnel to conduct a covert mission, a top-secret research and development intelligence operation responsible directly and only to the President of the United States.
The large number of documents that I've been able to accumulate very clearly show that we have a covert program to keep from the public the recovery of a large number of crashes that include the recovery of extraterrestrials.
The Majestic 12 documents detailed 4 types of spacecraft that aliens used. They included disc, cigar, circular, and triangular-shaped craft. But most intriguingly of all, within the pages of the MJ-12 documents, there is, for the first time in history, acknowledgement of alien beings that are known as the Greys. In these official-looking papers, they're called Extraterrestrial Biological Entities, or EBEs.
There was a special operations manual called Extraterrestrial Entities and Technology, Recovery and Disposal. And in that manual, there was a 1-page description of 2 different types of extraterrestrial biological entities.
EBE Type 1 is said to be, quote, humanoid and might be mistaken for human beings. They are bipedal, 5 to 5 feet 4 inches in height, and weigh 80 to 100 pounds. Cranium is somewhat larger and more rounded. The eyes are small, wide set, almond-shaped. EBE Type 2 is said to be, quote, 3 feet 5 inches to 4 feet 2 inches and weighs 25 to 50 pounds. Skeptics, however, claim that the MJ-12 documents are an elaborate hoax.
These were bogus. These were dummied up documents somebody made using an old typewriter and finding a signature off of a genuine Truman document and cutting and pasting and re-photocopying. And they are obvious and provable forgeries and fakes.
If these are faked, it is what you call an inside job, and that is a government job, someone who had access to information that was restricted at the very least.
More mysterious papers emerged in the 1980s, with riveting new details about the Greys. The Dulce papers perhaps were the most sensational. Released in 1987, they alleged that the US government was in collusion with the Greys in exchange for highly advanced technology. These unsubstantiated documents claimed that there was an underground facility somewhere in the New Mexico desert where the Greys were secretly enacting their evil agenda.
They're using us for breeding because they have fertility problems. We don't know how they reproduce. We know they don't have genitals.
Those who subscribe to this theory say the Greys abduct young, pregnant women.
Then within the first 3 months, first trimester, the pregnancy spontaneously just terminates. There's no bleeding, there's no spontaneous abortion, there's no regular abortion, there's none of that, and all of a sudden, it stops.
Believers say the extraterrestrials extract unborn babies from their victims and use them for their alien-human hybrid program.
These fetuses, if you will, are somehow kept by the ETs in usually these tanks, we call them. They're kept in fluid, and then they're somehow raised to be adults.
The release of these and other documents, coupled with new sightings, fueled the public's appetite for more information. People aware of these developments looked to the skies for signs of mysterious craft and beings from an alien planet.
There's no question that the UFO research field really exploded during the 1980s. It's an amazing phenomenon. You have, for the first time, widespread discussion of abductions. At the same time, UFO phenomenon became a major part of US popular culture, world popular culture at that time.
It is very much debatable, but some say the term Grey was first used in the 1980s to describe the extraterrestrials that were abducting humans and conducting reproductive experiments.
The term itself, Grey, used to describe these beings, seems to have become more common by the early and mid-1980s. I don't believe that it was common before that period of time.
But do the Greys actually exist? Or are they simply a product of pop culture?
The question arises, what happened, and to what extent does life imitate art or the reverse? It's hard to unsort some of this mess. It is my belief that there's a true core of reality to the UFO phenomenon.
Ufologists insist that the Earth may be in the midst of a diabolical invasion of Greys. As the 21st century unfolds, the number of alleged Grey alien abductions is rising, according to members of the UFO community. There is no way to verify these numbers, but one unofficial poll conducted by the Roper organization puts the number of alien abductions at 4 million.
I think the problem a lot of people have with the Greys in general is that they don't believe in UFOs to start with, so therefore they're not going to believe in something like abductions. But if you were to acknowledge the reality of UFOs as something non-human, the reality of something like Greys is not all that outrageous, it seems to me.
Eyewitnesses who swear they have encountered Greys are the primary source for all the information about these extraterrestrials. They report some commonalities that may reveal the true nature of the aliens' agenda.
There's always a light that comes from nowhere. It's either like an amber or a blue.
Then the terrified abductees report being surrounded and paralyzed by the alien creatures.
They're not just making you immobile. They put you almost in like a comatose state.
I've had occasions where I've been able to communicate with them to an extent, which is a mixture of them speaking in a sense that seems to be telepathic.
Some even claim the Greys whisk their human prizes away into space.